The night before my wedding, I was sitting on the floor of my childhood bedroom, dress hanging on the door, flowers ordered, guests flying in from across the country, and my parents looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You are no longer our daughter. Not because I did something wrong, not because I hurt them, but because I chose to marry someone they didn't approve of. Someone who, by the way, is the kindest, most hardworking man I have ever met in my life. But that didn't matter to them. What mattered to them was what the neighbors would say." Let me back up a little, because this story doesn't start the night before my wedding. It starts about 23 years earlier, the day I was born into a family where love always came with conditions. My name is Rachel. I grew up in a middle-class family in Ohio. My parents weren't cruel people, at least, not obviously. They worked hard, they provided, they showed up, but there was always this invisible rule book in our house. Rules I never got to read, but I was always being graded on. Get good grades, check. Don't embarrass us, check. Marry the right kind of person. That one, I failed. I met Daniel 3 years ago at a work conference in Chicago. He was smart, funny, and he actually listened when I talked, which, trust me, was new for me. We fell in love slowly, then all at once. Within a year, we knew this was it. He proposed on a Tuesday, evening on our apartment balcony with a ring he'd saved for 6 months to buy. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. When I told my parents about Daniel, my mother's first question wasn't, "Is he good to you?" It was, "What does his family do?" That should have been my sign. Daniel comes from a working-class background. His father is a mechanic. His mother passed away when he was 12. He put himself through college, built his career from nothing, and he is, without question, the most self-made person I know. But to my parents, he wasn't good enough. They never said it directly. That's not how they operated. Instead, it was 1,000 tiny cuts, little comments at dinner, loaded silences when his name came up. My mother once told me, "You could do better, Rachel. You've always aimed too low." I tried to make peace. I really did. I invited Daniel to every family event. I defended him quietly, over and over again. I kept hoping they'd see what I saw in him. They never did. The wedding was set for a Saturday in September. We had been planning it for 8 months. Nothing extravagant, just an intimate ceremony at a garden venue outside the city. About 60 guests, string lights, sunflowers, and a jazz trio Daniel had surprised me with because he remembered I once said jazz at a wedding sounded like a dream. My parents had been involved, or at least I thought they had been. My mother helped me pick the venue. My father had walked me through the guest list twice. There were moments, small ones, where it almost felt normal, where it almost felt like maybe they were coming around. I was wrong. 4 days before the wedding, my mother called me. Her voice had that particular flatness it gets when she's already made a decision and is just informing you of it. She said, "Your father and I need to talk to you. Come to the house." I went that evening. Daniel offered to come with me. I told him it was fine, that it was probably just last-minute wedding stuff, seating arrangements maybe, or something about the rehearsal dinner. I was so naive. When I walked in, they were both sitting in the living room, not on the couch together, separately. My father in his armchair, arms crossed. My mother on the edge of the sofa, hands folded in her lap like she was at a business meeting. No dinner on the stove. No "Hi, honey, how was the drive?" Just silence and 2 people who had clearly rehearsed what they were about to say. My father spoke first. "We've been talking," he said, "and we've decided we cannot support this wedding." I remember feeling the room tilt slightly, like my brain refused to process the sentence correctly the first time. "What do you mean?" I asked. My mother leaned forward. "Rachel, we have tried to accept Daniel. We have tried, but this is not the life we raised you for. This is not the future we sacrificed for. If you go through with this wedding tomorrow..." "It's in 4 days, Mom." She didn't even pause. "If you go through with this wedding, we will not be there. And we will not be in your life afterward." I sat there for a moment. Just sat there. "You're serious," I said. It wasn't even a question. "We are," my father said. And the way he said it, calm, decided, final, told me everything. This wasn't emotion talking. This was a choice they had made days ago. Maybe longer. I drove home in complete silence. I didn't cry. I didn't call Daniel right away. I just drove. I kept thinking about all the years I had spent trying to be enough for them. The grades, the career, the careful way I'd always phrased things so as not to upset them. The way I'd smile through Christmas dinners when they made Daniel feel small. The way I'd apologized for things that weren't my fault. Kept the peace, swallowed my words. All of it, for people who, on the eve of the most important day of my life, had chosen their pride over their daughter. When I got home, Daniel was on the couch watching TV. He took one look at my face and turned it off. "What happened?" he asked. And that's when I cried. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. He didn't say "I told you so," which he absolutely could have, because he had seen this coming long before I did. He just held me and let me fall apart for a little while, and then he said something I will never forget. "Rachel, do you want to marry me?" I looked up at him. "Yes," I said. "More than anything." "Then we get married on Saturday," he said. "And we build something so good that it speaks for itself." The wedding day came. My parents were not there. 60 people filled those garden seats. Friends, Daniel's family, co-workers, people who had driven hours to be there. My best friend Maya walked me down the aisle because she said, "I have been waiting for this job my whole life and I am not giving it up." I wore my dress. The sunflowers were perfect. The jazz trio played something slow and sweet as I walked out. And when I saw Daniel standing there, this man who had never once made me feel like I had to earn his love, I didn't feel the absence of my parents. I felt free. We said our vows. We signed the papers. We danced until 11 o'clock at night. It was the best day of my life. But the story doesn't end there. Because a few weeks later, I made a decision that changed everything. "Yes," I said. "More than anything." "Then we get married on Saturday," he said. "And we build something so good that it speaks for itself." The wedding day came. My parents were not there. 60 people filled those garden seats. Friends, Daniel's family, co-workers, people who had driven hours to be there. My best friend Maya walked me down the aisle because she said, "I have been waiting for this job my whole life and I am not giving it up." I wore my dress. The sunflowers were perfect. The jazz trio played something slow and sweet as I walked out. And when I saw Daniel standing there, this man who had never once made me feel like I had to earn his love, I didn't feel the absence of my parents. I felt free. We said our vows. We signed the papers. We danced until 11 o'clock at night. It was the best day of my life. But the story doesn't end there. Because a few weeks later, I made a decision that changed everything. 3 weeks after our wedding, my mother called. I stared at her name on my screen for a long moment before I answered. Part of me wanted to let it ring, but another part of me, the part that had spent 23 years, hoping these people would finally choose me, picked up. "Rachel," she said. Her voice was different, softer. "We've been thinking. Your father and we want to talk." I said, "Okay." She said they wanted to meet for dinner. A restaurant, neutral ground. She used those exact words. Neutral ground, like we were two countries. Negotiating a treaty. Maybe we were, I told Daniel. He asked if I wanted him to come. I said no. This one I needed to do alone. We met on a Wednesday evening. I got there first and chose a corner table. I wanted to be able to see them walk in. I wanted that one moment of watching them. Before they saw me and just to read the room. Before the conversation started. They looked older. It had only been 3 weeks, but something about them seemed smaller somehow. Like the version of themselves they'd always presented to the world had slipped just slightly. My mother hugged me at the table. My father patted my shoulder. We ordered water. Nobody touched the bread. My mother started. She said they had been wrong to give me an ultimatum. She said they'd missed the wedding, and that was painful for them. She said she hoped we could move forward as a family. I noticed what she didn't say. She didn't say she was sorry for what she'd said about Daniel. She didn't say she'd been wrong about him. She didn't say she respected my choice or that she understood what she had done to me. The night before my wedding, sitting me down in that living room like I was being called into a boardroom and handed a termination letter. She said it was painful for them. I let her finish. Then I folded my hands on the table, looked at both of them, and said very calmly, "I appreciate you reaching out. I really do, but I need to say something, and I need you to hear me." They both nodded. "What you did wasn't just hurtful. It was a choice, a deliberate, planned choice. You had 4 days to call me, to change your minds, to show up, and you didn't. And I have spent my entire life making myself smaller, so that you would love me without conditions. I decorated my choices around your comfort. I apologized for things that were never wrong. I kept the peace at the cost of my own." My mother opened her mouth. I kept going. "I'm not angry anymore. I want you to know that, but I am different now. And I need you to understand what that means before we talk about moving forward." The dinner ended cordially. No dramatic blow-up. No tears at the table. We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, and I drove home and sat in my car in the driveway for about 10 minutes just breathing. But that wasn't the giving back part. That was just the conversation. The giving back part came 2 weeks later. Over the years, my parents had given me things. Not out of pure generosity. I understood that now. They were investments. The college fund they contributed to, which they had reminded me of at least 40 times over the years. The car they'd helped me buy at 22. The furniture they'd purchased when I moved into my first apartment. Every gift had come with a thread attached, and whenever they needed leverage, they pulled it. So I did the math, quietly, carefully over the course of about 10 days. I calculated every dollar they had ever given me, that had since been used as a weapon in an argument. Every amount that had come with the phrase, "after everything we've done for you." And then I paid it back. Not all at once. I sent a check to their house with a short letter. The letter said, "I have been so grateful for your support over the years, but I've realized that I have been carrying a debt I never agreed to, one that was used to remind me of my place whenever. I stepped out of line, so I am clearing it, not out of anger, out of freedom. This is me giving back what was never really a gift." The total came out to just over $11,000, money Daniel and I had saved carefully over the past year for a home down payment. We chose to use it for this instead, because some things are worth more than a down payment. Some things are worth your dignity. My mother called the day the check arrived. She was crying. She said I didn't have to do this. She said she didn't want the money. I told her gently, "I know you don't want it, but I need to give it back, because now nothing between us has a price tag. If we rebuild this relationship, it'll be because we both choose to, not because I owe you." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't know you felt that way." And I said, "I know, Mom, that's kind of the whole problem. People always ask me, did your parents ever really change? And I want to give you an honest answer, not a neat one, because real life doesn't always wrap up the way we want it to. And I think you deserve the truth more than you deserve a pretty ending." The short answer is, a little. They changed a little. My mother started calling more regularly after I sent that check. Not every week, but enough. The conversations were different, quieter, more careful. Like she was choosing her words instead of just releasing them. My father took longer. He's always been a man of fewer words and even fewer apologies. But about 4 months after the wedding, he called me on a Sunday afternoon. Completely out of nowhere, bought and talked to me for 45 minutes about nothing in particular. His garden, a book he was reading, a memory from when I was 7 years old that he said he'd been thinking about lately. He never said the words "I'm sorry," but that phone call was the closest thing to it I think he knew how to give. And I made a decision that day to accept it, not because it was enough, but because I was done waiting for people to love me in the exact way I needed and missing the love they were actually capable of giving. That was its own kind of freedom. As for Daniel and me, I know people love a good, and then everything was perfect ending. And while I won't pretend our life is perfect, I will tell you this. We bought a house 8 months after the wedding. A small one, needs work, has a yard that looks like it gave up on itself. Sometime around 2015. We spend weekends fixing it up slowly. Daniel built a raised garden bed last spring, and I killed every single thing I planted in it except one stubborn tomato plant that somehow survived my complete lack of gardening skills. We have a life that is ours, fully, completely ours. Nobody helped us build it. Nobody holds it over our heads. When we sit on our back porch on a Friday evening with takeout and bad reality, TV and the dog we adopted named Biscuit, who is, by the way, the love of my life, and I will hear nothing against him. There is no invisible debt attached to any of it. That feeling, that clean, quiet, "this is ours" feeling, is something I did not know. I was missing until I finally had it. I want to talk to you for a second. Directly. If you are someone who grew up in a family where love always felt like a transaction, where affection came with fine print, I want you to know something important. You are not ungrateful for wanting love without conditions. You are not selfish for refusing to keep paying a debt you never agreed to. You are not a bad daughter or a bad son or a bad person for finally saying, enough. The people who raised us were not always wrong, but they were not always right either. And somewhere along the way, a lot of us were taught that loyalty to family means accepting whatever they give us, including the harm. That questioning them is betrayal. That walking away, even partially, even temporarily, makes us the villain of the story. It doesn't. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to keep shrinking yourself to fit into a space that was never built for the real you. I still think about that night in my parents' living room sometimes. The way the room felt. The way my father's voice sounded, calm and decided, like he'd already filed me away somewhere in his mind under lost cause. And then I think about walking down that garden aisle on my wedding day. Maya on my arm, squeezing my hand too tight because she was more nervous than I was. Daniel at the end of that aisle looking at me like I was the only thing worth looking at in the entire world. I think about the letter I wrote, the check I sent, the phone call after, and I think I would do all of it again. Every painful, terrifying, expensive, liberating piece of it. Because on the other side of the hardest thing I ever did was the life I actually wanted. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to choose between belonging and being yourself, I hope you choose yourself every single time. You are worth that choice. And if nobody in your life has told you that lately, I'm telling you now, take care of yourself. And I'll see you in the next one.